The engine sputtered, coughed, and died right as the Nevada sun dipped below the horizon, painting the desert in shades of fire and shadow. I was stranded, alone, on a stretch of Route 50 so desolate it felt like the edge of the world. Then, headlights pierced the dusk, and my heart skipped. Not from fear, but from the strange electric certainty that everything was about to change. My name is Riley Parker, a 30-year-old wanderer who uses they/them pronouns, chasing stories across America with nothing but a beat-up convertible and a notebook full of half-finished dreams. I'd been driving from San Francisco to nowhere in particular, letting the road decide my fate, when my car betrayed me. The hood was up, my hands greasy, and my patience thinner than the desert air when the tow truck rumbled to a stop. Out stepped Eli Navarro, 35, with broad shoulders, a 5 o'clock shadow, and eyes that held a quiet storm. He wasn't just a tow truck driver. He was a man who carried the weight of a life I was about to unravel. "You look like you're in a bind," Eli said, his voice low and warm, like gravel smoothed by a river. He tipped his worn baseball cap, revealing a scar above his left eyebrow that made me wonder about the stories he hadn't told. I laughed, nervous, and gestured at the car. "This thing's got a mind of its own. Think you can save it?" Eli knelt by the engine, his calloused hands moving with a confidence that made my pulse quicken. "I can save a lot of things," he said, glancing up with a half-smile that felt like a challenge. There was something in his gaze, curiosity, maybe, or recognition, that made me feel seen in a way I hadn't been in years. I'd spent so long running from attachments, from the mess of human connection, that I'd forgotten how it felt to be looked at like that. As he worked, we talked. Not the small talk you'd expect from a stranger fixing your car, but real talk, about the stars above us, the weight of expectations, the way the desert made you feel both infinite and insignificant. Eli was a Nevada native, born in a small town called Ely, where everyone knew everyone and secrets were harder to keep than water in the sand. He'd been a mechanic, a soldier, a dreamer who never quite left the desert behind. I told him about my life on the road, about the stories I wrote for no one but myself, about the family I'd left in Chicago who didn't understand why I couldn't just settle down. "Settling's overrated," Eli said, wiping his hands on a rag. "Sometimes you gotta break down to find where you're supposed to be." His words hit harder than they should have, and I found myself staring at the way his jaw tightened when he spoke, like he was holding back something bigger. The car was a lost cause for the night, so Eli offered to tow it to his shop in Ely, a good hour away. I climbed into the cab of his tow truck, the air thick with the scent of motor oil and something sweeter, like cedar. We drove in companionable silence, the radio crackling with old country tunes, and I stole glances at him, his profile sharp against the glow of the dashboard, his fingers tapping the wheel like he was keeping time with his own thoughts. When we reached Ely, the town was asleep, its neon signs flickering like tired stars. Eli's shop was a squat building with a hand-painted sign, Navarro's Auto. He led me inside, where the air was warm and cluttered with tools and memories. "You can crash here tonight," he said, pointing to a cot in the corner. "I'll take a look at your car in the morning." I nodded, grateful, but the truth was I didn't want the night to end. There was something about Eli, something raw and unguarded, that made me want to stay. As he showed me around, our shoulders brushed, and I felt a spark that wasn't just static. He paused, his breath catching, and for a moment, we stood there inches apart, the world shrinking to the space between us. "You're not like most people who pass through here," he said softly, his eyes searching mine. "Most folks are just passing. You feel like you're looking for something." "Maybe I am," I admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe I just found it." That night, I lay on the cot, listening to the hum of the desert outside, my heart racing with the possibility of what tomorrow might bring. Eli was in the next room, working late, and I could hear the clink of tools, the soft curse when something didn't go right. I didn't know it then, but that broken-down car was the least of what was about to be fixed or broken between us. The morning sun spilled through the shop's grimy windows, casting golden streaks across Eli's workbench. I woke to the sound of his voice, low and steady, talking to someone on the phone about parts for my car. There was a gentleness in his tone, a patience that made me wonder who he was outside this grease-stained world. I sat up, rubbing sleep from my eyes, and caught him watching me. "Morning," he said, a shy grin breaking through his usual stoicism. He was in a flannel shirt now, sleeves rolled up to reveal forearms corded with muscle, and a tattoo of a desert rose curling around his wrist. "Sleep okay?" "Better than I expected," I said, stretching. "You always let strangers crash in your shop?" "Only the ones who look like they've got a story worth hearing." He handed me a mug of coffee, strong and black, and our fingers brushed again. This time, neither of us pulled away. We spent the morning working on the car together. Eli explained the problem, a busted fuel pump, and I handed him tools, feeling oddly at home in the rhythm of it all. He teased me about my city hands, too soft for wrenches, and I shot back about his questionable taste in country music. It was easy, like we'd known each other for years instead of hours. But beneath the banter, there was a current, a pull I couldn't ignore. Every time our eyes met, it felt like we were daring each other to say something real. By noon, the car was running, but Eli suggested I stick around. "Eli's got a festival tonight," he said, leaning against the hood. "Small-town stuff, food, music, people pretending they don't know each other's secrets. You in?" I should have said no. I was a drifter, always moving, never staying. But the thought of leaving Eli, of leaving this moment, felt like tearing out a page I wasn't done reading. "I'm in," I said, and his smile was worth every mile I'd driven. The festival was a riot of color and sound, strung with fairy lights and filled with the smell of barbecue and cotton candy. Eli introduced me to locals. Maria, a trans woman who ran the diner and gave me a knowing wink. Jamal, a queer artist who painted murals on every blank wall in town. They welcomed me like I belonged, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like an outsider. As night fell, Eli and I wandered to the edge of the festival, where a band played soft acoustic covers. We sat on a blanket under a sky so clear it felt like we could touch the stars. "You ever think about staying somewhere?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the music. "Like, really staying?" I looked at him, his face lit by the glow of the lights, and my chest tightened. "I've never found a reason to," I said. "Not until now." He reached for my hand, his calluses rough against my skin, and I let him. We didn't speak, didn't need to. The world was loud, but in that moment, it was just us. Two people who'd found each other in the middle of nowhere, holding on like we were afraid to let go. But small towns have eyes, and not all of them are kind. As we walked back through the festival, I noticed a group of men by the beer tent, their stares sharp and cold. One of them, a broad-shouldered guy with a buzz cut, muttered something to his friends, and their laughter cut through the music. Eli's grip on my hand tightened, and I saw the storm in his eyes again. Not fear, but defiance. "Old friends?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Old problems," he said, his jaw tight. "That's Caleb. Used to be my best friend. Things changed when I came out." I wanted to ask more, but the weight of his words stopped me. Instead, I squeezed his hand, letting him know I was there. We kept walking, but the air felt heavier now, like the desert was holding its breath. Back at the shop, Eli was quieter, his usual warmth dimmed. I followed him inside, my heart pounding with questions I didn't know how to ask. "You okay?" I finally said, standing by the workbench where he was tinkering with a carburetor. He didn't look up. Caleb and we grew up together. When I told him I was gay, he didn't just walk away. He made sure everyone in town knew, made it a spectacle. I stayed because this is my home, but some days, it feels like a fight I can't win. I stepped closer, my hand hovering over his shoulder before I let it rest there. You're still here. That's winning. He turned, his eyes searching mine, and for a moment, I thought he might kiss me. Instead, he pulled me into a hug, his arms strong and steady, and I felt the walls I'd built around myself start to crack. The next few days blurred into a rhythm I hadn't known I craved. I stayed in Ely, crashing at Eli's shop, helping with small repairs, and falling deeper into the orbit of his world. We'd work side by side, our hands brushing over tools, our laughter filling the silences. At night, we'd sit on the shop's roof, sharing stories under the desert sky, each one pulling us closer. But the shadow of Caleb lingered. I saw him around town, always with that same group, their eyes following us like hawks. Eli brushed it off, but I could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his smile faltered when they were near. I wanted to protect him, to shield him from the weight of their judgment, but I was a stranger here, a guest in his fight. One afternoon, while Eli was out on a tow job, I wandered into Maria's diner for coffee. She slid into the booth across from me, her eyes sharp but kind. You and Eli, she said, stirring her tea. You're good for him. He's been alone too long. He's not alone, I said, but the words felt hollow. I was still a drifter, my car fixed, my bag packed. Staying wasn't part of my plan. Maria leaned forward. Eli's not easy for people like us. I transitioned 10 years ago, and some folks still call me by my old name. Eli's been out since he was 20, and he's taken more hits than most. If you're gonna stay, you gotta be ready for that. Her words stayed with me, heavy as the desert heat. That night, when Eli came back, I found him in the shop, staring at an old photo on the wall. A younger Eli, arm around Caleb, both of them grinning like the world was theirs. We were kids, he said, sensing my presence. Thought we'd be brothers forever. Funny how things change. I stepped closer, my heart aching for the boy in that photo. You don't have to fight alone, you know? He turned, his eyes raw. You don't get it, Riley. This town. It's my home, but it's also my cage. I stay because I want to prove I belong. But sometimes I wonder if I'm just fooling myself. I reached for him, my hand finding his. You belong. Not because of them, but because of you. That night we crossed a line. Started with a kiss. Tentative, then desperate, like we were trying to outrun the world. His hands were gentle but sure, and I felt myself unraveling, all my walls crumbling under the weight of his touch. We didn't sleep, just held each other on that cot. The desert quiet outside, our breaths loud in the dark. But morning brought trouble. I woke to the sound of glass shattering. Eli was already up, his face pale as he stared at the shop's front window, now a spiderweb of cracks. Spray painted across it in red were the words, "Freak. Leave." My stomach twisted, and Eli's hands clenched into fists. Caleb, he said, his voice flat. He's done this before. I grabbed his arm, my voice shaking with anger. We're calling the cops. No, Eli said sharply. They won't do anything. Half of them drink with Caleb on weekends. This is how it works here. Then we fight back, I said, surprising myself with the fierceness in my voice. We don't let him win. Eli looked at me, his eyes a mix of fear and hope. You don't have to do this, Riley. You can leave. You've got no skin in this game. But I did. For the first time, I had someone worth fighting for. We spent the day cleaning up, boarding the window and planning. Maria and Jamal stopped by, offering support, and I saw the community Eli had built, the family he'd found despite the hate. It gave me courage, but it also scared me. I was falling for him, and that meant risking everything I'd spent years avoiding. The days that followed were a tightrope walk. Eli and I grew closer, our nights filled with whispered confessions and stolen kisses. But the vandalism wasn't a one-off. Tires were slashed on Eli's truck, and hateful notes appeared under the shop's door. Each one chipped away at him, and I could see the exhaustion in his eyes, the way he carried the town's judgment like a weight. I wanted to stay, to fight beside him, but doubt crept in. What could I do? A drifter with no roots, against a town's worth of prejudice. I'd never stayed anywhere long enough to face something like this, and the thought of failing Eli terrified me. One night, as we sat on the shop's roof, Eli broke the silence. "I've been thinking about leaving," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Starting over somewhere new. Somewhere I don't have to look over my shoulder." I stared at him, my heart sinking. "You'd leave, Eli? This is your home." "It's not about the place," he said, turning to me. "It's about who I'm with. You make me think I could be more than this town's punching bag." His words hit me like a freight train. I wanted to tell him I'd stay, that we could face this together, but the words caught in my throat. Instead, I kissed him, pouring everything I couldn't say into that moment. The next morning, Caleb escalated. We found the shop's door kicked in, tools scattered, and another message painted on the wall. "You don't belong." Eli's face was a mask of rage and pain, and I knew we couldn't keep ignoring this. I called Maria and Jamal, and together we hatched a plan, not just to clean up, but to fight back. Maria suggested a community meeting, a chance to confront the hate head-on. Jamal offered to host it at his art studio, a neutral space where people might listen. Eli was hesitant, but I saw the spark of hope in his eyes, the same spark I'd seen that first night on the highway. The meeting was tense. About 20 people showed up, some allies, some curious, and a few, like Caleb, openly hostile. Eli stood at the front, his voice steady but raw, and told his story. He talked about growing up in Ely, about the pain of losing friends, about the shop that was his lifeline. I watched him, my heart swelling with pride and fear, and when he faltered, I stepped up beside him. "I'm not from here," I said, my voice shaking, "but I've seen what Eli's built, what he means to this town. He's not the one who doesn't belong. Hate is." There was silence, then murmurs. Maria spoke next, then Jamal, their voices weaving a tapestry of resilience. Some people nodded, others walked out. Caleb stayed, his arms crossed, his face unreadable. When it was over, Eli pulled me aside, his eyes shining. "You didn't have to do that," he said. "I wanted to," I replied, and for the first time I meant it. I was all in. That night, we made love under the desert stars, the world fading until it was just us. But as I lay in his arms, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were on borrowed time. Caleb wasn't done, and neither was the town's judgment. The final blow came a week later. I woke to the smell of smoke and Eli's frantic voice. "Riley, get up." The shop was on fire, flames licking the walls, devouring everything Eli had built. We stumbled outside, coughing, as sirens wailed in the distance. The fire department arrived, but the damage was done. The shop was a husk, and with it, Eli's dreams. We stood in the ashes, his hand in mine, as the truth settled in. Caleb was arrested. Witnesses had seen him near the shop with a gas can. But the victory felt hollow. Eli's home, his livelihood, was gone. And I, the drifter who'd never stayed, was the only thing he had left. "I'm done," Eli said, his voice breaking. "I can't rebuild here. Not again." "Then don't," I said, surprising myself. Come with me. We'll find a new place, a new start. Together. He looked at me, his eyes searching for something to hold on to. You mean that? I've never meant anything more. We left Ely the next day, my convertible packed with what little we could salvage. Maria and Jamal saw us off, their hugs fierce and tearful. You're family now, Maria said, pressing a diner mug into my hands. Don't be strangers. As we drove west, the desert stretching endless before us, I felt a weight lift. Eli's hand rested on mine, and for the first time I wasn't running. I was choosing him, choosing us. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was ours. Months later, we settled in a small coastal town in Oregon, where the air smelled of salt and second chances. Eli opened a new shop, smaller but his, and I started writing again. My stories now filled with hope instead of longing. We weren't perfect. Fights flared, doubts lingered, but we were real. And every night, as we fell asleep to the sound of waves, I knew we'd found something worth breaking down for. The tow truck driver had pulled me over, but it was Eli who pulled down my walls, showing me that love wasn't a place you found. It was a home you built, together, no matter where the road took you.